me say something first of all by what I mean by the title. Let me sneak in some facts while I'm pretending to fix my notation. F is always going to be a non-Archimedean local field, locally compact in my notation as well, so it comes as with a discrete valuation ring. Which I'll call OF. That has a maximal ideal. EF. Okay, and one notation that has to be remembered, the residue field, that's going to be finite of characteristic P. And P always means that. Right, so we have the usual things. F with addition is an example of a locally profinite group. I.e. any open neighbourhood of 0 in this case contains a compact open subgroup. Right, and likewise for the multiplicative group I use the standard notations. UF is the units, UKF is 1 plus kth power of this maximal ideal. K is 1. Right. This topology passes over it gives you locally profinite topologies on what will usually be called A, which is n by n matrices, and on G, which is G on F. We're not doing this big enough, sorry. Now, on the one hand, and I should say beyond this level of generality, when I say representation, of a locally profinite group, I mean complex and smooth representation. Alright, I've no truck with modular representations today, and smooth means what it always means. Anything, any vector in the representation space is fixed by an open subgroup. Right, so the core objects are, this is purely to explain what I'm doing. Various technical terms, if you happen to be unfamiliar, will be flushed out as we go along. AN of F, that's the set of equivalence or isomorphism classes of irreducible cuspidal representations of GL and F. Right, and on the other hand, I want a separable algebraic closure I want its Phase group and for the time being I need Gn of F. Probably ought to put a 0 there. Equivalence classes blah 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 of irreducible representations of WF of degree n, dimension n. Right. Or do anything?
Oh,
no.
No. There's a switch.
Okay, fine. Thanks. So, Langland's correspondence tells me I've got a canonical bijection from, which way shall I do it today? AN0F to GN0F, and except when I do it the other way, it's L pi goes to L pi, specified by a short list of not readily penetrable conditions. And this is my point. It's now 25 years since Phil Kutzko and I actually classified these things. Explicitly up to a point. It looks fairly explicit, though the classification has some features which can be quite difficult to handle, as we will see as we go along. So we are only one step from identifying a mystery with an enigma by a process we don't understand. This, at least, we have some grip on. This, we don't know anywhere near as much as people would have you believe. And as I say, the specification of the Langland's correspondence via local constants and pairs, or any other way you think of, is pretty difficult. If you want any information, it's like sending a carrier pigeon to the far side of the moon, I'm afraid. So, what I want to talk about is, well, quite a long program of work getting to recent stuff on how you can try to transport what you know from here to here, how the bits fit together. It's a two-way operation. Things you'd like to do in GLN turn out to be much easier to do on the Galois side and take back, as well as the other way round. Now, that's a significant chunk of work. As I say, this is 25 years ago, and much of the following that 25 years has been spent working with NER on, while not always knowing that's what we were doing, this problem of transmitting information backwards and forwards. I emphasise I'm not looking for a local proof of Langland's correspondence. I know perfectly well that's not achievable by anything that I know at the moment. Is that what I think it is? Yes. Now, also in this process I do not want, and you do not want to experience, an exposition of this classification theory. What I'll do is I'll start with some examples which give the direction of the thing and what the strategy has to be. You come up with an iterative problem, which is actually rather difficult to state, but the classification then comes out as a solution of that. So I shall just be picking out from here enough to make it seem reasonable, and the bits that we need to actually do anything with the Galois side. Looking at this audience, it's probably below your level, but if there's any, I've given Manish for putting on the web somewhere a set of notes from a course I gave in China 5 years ago when this was a lot less developed. So the beginning of that course is rather more detailed than this one will be, and the end is irrelevant because it all gets swallowed up in a couple of lines. Right, so that's my general strategy, or an overview. So let's just get more standard stuff down to make sure we all know where we are. So let's have let's work in. It is better actually to say, let's take V is an F vector space of finite dimension n. And so G is going to be its orthomorphisms. And I its endomorphisms. Following normal practice, of course, I will say a parabolic subgroup of G is the stabilizer, call it P of a flag. Let's say, which way around do I want to do it? I always get this. V is V0 contains V1 contains VR equals 0. Say these strict containments makes life much easier. Right, so it's a common stabilizer of a flag of subspaces. I choose subspaces Wi of V so that Vj is Wj plus 1 plus, or I want less, plus Wi. The stabilizer call it L of all W is the Levy factor of P, and if I take U as the kernel of the obvious map, P to the product of the Wj mod Wj plus, hang on, Wj's, viewed as quotients of those things which are stable under P, then I've got P is a semi-direct product of L and U. Now, and U is the unipotent radical. Right, so to keep my conscience moderately clear, the reason for introducing this is simply to define the notion of a cuspidal representation. If pi, I need a different V, is an irreducible representation of G. That is cuspidal if V has no non-zero quotient on which U acts true. Think of it as a representation of U and you look to see whether it's better. And that's to hold for U as the unipotent radical of any parabolic P which is different from. Right, that's the official definition. There's another definition in terms of coefficients. The key point is that if pi is not cuspidal, pi is a sum rep of an representation induced from some P mod U. That's a rather cryptic way of saying it. P mod U is a product of dear, that's bad, isn't it? P to the product of the automorphisms of those. P mod U is the product of smaller GLNs, and so you can take tensor products of irreducible representations, inflate it to P, and induce. And so non-cuspidal ones turn up that way. So the cuspidal ones, if you like, are the basic building blocks. That's not, doing that rather quickly, because that's not actually the way we think about them. This requires a rather different approach. For this I need the notion of intertwining. So, and this is quite general, G might as well be what it was before. But let's take, but it can be, as I say, quite general. Let's take for I equals 1, 2, Ki is to be a compact open subgroup of G, rho I is to be an irreducible representation of Ki. Alright, so the Ki are compact groups. They have semi-simple representation theory. Now if I take G and G, I say G intertwines rho 1 with rho 2 to mean if. Now, I form the group K1 conjugated by G intersect K2, and I form the representation rho 1 conjugated by G of K1G, restricted to there. I want that to be non-zero. In other words, G intertwines it if and only if the conjugate of the first representation and the second representation have a component in common when you restrict to their common domain. Right. This is a simple elementary notion which runs and runs and runs in this subject. I'm not going to go into it at all deeply, but let me just remark that if I've got, let's come to it a moment. If I've got just this same situation, I can form the compact induced representation Ki to G of rho I as follows. Say rho I goes from Ki to the complex automorphisms of space Wi. I can look at functions F which go from Gi to Wi.
G.
Sorry, Ki. No, Gi. Sorry, what have I done?
There's no G.
No, there's not that G. There's no G.
G. Yes, sorry. Right, G's Wi with the property that f of k g is rho I of k f of g, k and ki, and f is compactly supported modulo ki. Alright, the support of such a function f is a union of cosets of ki and g. So if there are only finitely many of them, because this is I hope I said somewhere, they're open, yeah. So it's a support is in fact on a finite number of cosets. Right. The reason for bringing this up is that there exists G in G which intertwines rho 1 with rho 2 if and only if these two compactly induced representations have a homomorphism between them. That can be refined enormously. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Mackey theory that goes from this. You can put intertwining together to produce intertwining algebras. The intertwining algebra is the endomorphism ring of a compactly induced representation and so on. I don't need any of that stuff for today, just really to indicate that this is what's here. Right. So having said that, oh yes, now this is the point where we always fiddle it in this game. I said compact open there. This is all okay if the ki are open and compact modulo the centre of G. Or at least for any groups that I care about. Right. So now one comes across what's really the starting point of the subject, of the way we do it. There's no good reason why this method should work. It does. So let's go back to G is the least up to isomorphism GLN F. Its centre is Z, which is the group of scalar matrices. Now, if I take an open subgroup of G, which is compact modulo this centre, and I take an irreducible representation of K. Now, suppose that any G in G that intertwines rho with itself, that thing has to lie in K. Suppose you have that condition, or anything that lies in K certainly intertwines rho with itself, that follows from the definition. Then, when I compactly induce this representation rho, that is irreducible and cuspidal. Right, that is not a particularly deep theorem. That's rather. It's a little bit tricky, you've got to get it just right, but it only takes a few lines. But the point is, leaving aside one or two rather alien constructions like the Vey representation that works for GL2, and probably others that I've forgotten about, this is the only machine we have for actually producing cuspidal representations in any generality. Presently we know it gives all irreducible cuspidal representations for GLNF, for inner forms of GLNF, in other words matrix rings over division algebras, classical groups in odd residual characteristics, so that's unitary, better be careful about unitary, certainly symplectic and orthogonal, and I think there are similar results for some exceptional groups. I'm not quite sure where things are with that. There's no earthly reason why, for a fixed group, this should give all cuspidal representations, except that it seems to. I wouldn't be shocked to find it not true in general. Lots of time has been wasted over the years by people thinking I could get a pure Thor proof that it did give all cuspidals, but I've never seen any results. So, that's what we do. With that in our mind, we go through and we try to pick apart cuspidal representations and see they're of this form. And the point is, get a coherent account of the representations we need to induce together. Right, it's a long road, but the first, I think I now want to go to the first classical, hyperclassical example. Where am I? 5 past 10, plenty of time. Now this really rather harmless example contains a lot of the features that one has to deal with in general. Now, so I'm going to go back to G is GLN of F. I want K to be GLN of the discrete valuation ring. That's a maximal compact subgroup, it's open. Maximality doesn't matter, so that's a compact open subgroup. And I want the subgroup of that, K1, which is to be the identity matrix plus all matrices which are integral with their entries to the score by P. Right. So that's a normal subgroup, of course, of K mod K1. Is GLN of the residue field. Now, let's call it rho till. That's to be an irreducible representation of K mod K1, which is cuspidal. And there, for finite GLNs, the proof's the same as before, except it's a bit easier. It does not contain the trivial character or any unipotent radical. Non-trivial. Alright, these things I should add have been known since the mid-50s, work of Sandy Green, and have been hacked over regularly ever since, so you can think of them whatever way suits you best, be it Green, Deligne, Lustig, and a couple of other names as well. They're there and well known, but I won't use any of that stuff. Right, and now here I want to take rho as the inflation of rho tilde to k. And then the point is, so the G in G intertwines rho if and only if G is in not exactly K, but K times the centre of big group G. Now, let me run through this, because quite a lot drops out, particularly if you have faith at the appropriate point. G, let's remark first of all that G intertwines rho if and only if G prime intertwines rho for all G prime in the coset Z, K, G, K. Using by an element, the centre is not going to change anything, and intertwining is a double coset property anyway. Comes from the definition. So, if G is not in KZ, G, K, G, K, Z, put Z wherever you like, as a representative. A diagonal matrix. Now then, I need to say that that's going to be strange. A generator of the maximal ideal is going to be a strange IF. So this is IF to the A1, IF to the A2, dot IF to the AR1, dot, like that. So, never remember what that's called. Something very elementary does that for you. And I can take A1 greater or equal A2 greater or equal AR greater 0. I can get that because I've insisted that G is not in KZ. Right. So, let me now, since it contains all the key points, specialise to the case. Let's go over here. It saves me a lot of irrelevant work. Take n equals 2. We just have to do density block matrices in general, but for n equals 2, that says that my G looks like IF to the A, 1, 0, 0. A is at least 1. And when I put look at G inverse KG intersect K, that contains the group one, anything integral 0, 1, and my representation rho G. Now rho G is trivial on K1, which is matrices with P's in them. So when I've done this conjugation, I get this in the KG, in the K1G. So rho G is trivial on this group, but it's got to have a component in common with rho on that group. That's intertwining. Rho does not contain trivial character of this group. because it's cuspidal and it isn't allowed to. Right, and that works in any dimension perfectly easily. You just got to juggle big block matrices to get it to work. And it takes a line or two more. But there are the sort of lines I can't do anymore standing in front of a blackboard. Right. Now, I can play the same game, slightly broader context. Let's take, instead of taking rho twice, let rho tilde prime be an irreducible of k mod k1. That was the GLN of the residue field. Inflates to rho prime on k. Now, exactly the same calculation shows that if there exists G in G such that which intertwines, doesn't matter which way I say it, it's symmetric enough, rho prime with rho, then rho prime twiddle is cuspidal and equivalent to rho. So the intertwining sets this lot apart, divides this sort of spectrum of GL of the finite field very strictly into two pieces, So, what can I get from that little bit of nonsense? First remark, let's take rho as at the start. So that's inflated from a cuspidal representation of GLN of the residue field. I extend to a representation, what should we call it? Rho uppers, that's a modern notation. I'll run out of, let's call it R. I just put in the centre. I'll do that, that's not a problem, we wasn't extended from the centre. And then, Cn Kz to G. It's now called R. It's irreducible and cuspidal. These things, all right, the rho defines R, rho defines this representation. After tensoring with a representation chi through the determinant, chi is an unramified character. With F cross, right, the rows give you this family of this twist class, twisting by unramified characters, and this class determines the row uniquely. Because if there was another inflated from cuspidal representation of K contained in there, it would have to intertwine with rho, and it can't. Any such rho, let's call that pi rho. In fact, let me say that a little bit better. pi r actually determines pi r. Oh, sorry. I.
Just true.
R is the natural representation of zk on k1 fixed vectors. Pi r. Right, and that's also saying that you never get, I'm cheating a little bit here, you never get any other representations turning up in this pi r which are inflated from finite GLN. So basically what you get, I'm cheating here, it's worrying me. I've got a family of cuspidals which are parameterized by cuspidals over here. Over the residue field, yes, and I actually proved that I couldn't have any other representation of inflated from the residue field turning up. If there is one that turns up in this irreducible representation, it has to intertwine with my R, and so the representation had to be custom. So, in this rather simple example, you get a large chunk of the spectrum of this huge group G governed quite clearly by the spectrum of this finite group. Alright, it contains a lot of things which recur frequently enough in a slightly different form. It's a sort of boundary case, but it's useful to show the scope of the power of this intertwining method. So, now, where do you go from there? Like this, so. This process determines, this gives a family irreducible cuspidal reps of G, those ones which have the K1 fixed vector. Alright, now let me go back to what I think I just messed up then. Let's take a cuspidal representation. Right, with actually having a K1 fixed vector. Now, yeah, I knew I was cheating. The point is, let's take K acts on K1, take an irreducible component. Right. Alright. Well, rho is inflated from rho tilde on K mod K1. And we just seen that if rho tilde is cuspidal, implies pi is a C, and according to R, that's rho extended. thing I was tripping up over is this, which is a quite a deep result. If rho is not cuspidal, you can show pi is not cuspidal. Right, that isn't a trivial matter at all, but it's typical of the sort of dichotomy that comes up in this. You start looking at what comes up by way of representations of carefully chosen compact open subgroups. If you see the right sort of thing, you know the representation is cuspidal. In this particular extreme example, if you don't see it cuspidal, if you see it's not cuspidal, then the representation that contains this of no interest is not cuspidal. There are a number of procedures roughly equivalent to take from this non-cuspidal representation construction of a non-zero Jacquet module, yes. U-fixed quotient for some unipotent radical. This is part of the branch of the subject. When you're doing the proofs, you have to carry these things along together. This one I'm going to cut out completely. Whenever I see this sort of thing, I just forget it. You just eliminate that representation from consideration. So, yeah, now go back to what I should have been saying, is that you're seeing here, just by, if you've got a respectable space of fixed things, you can pick out the cuspidals using a representation of a slightly bigger group and actually say what they are from there. This is the easiest case. This sort of analysis is actually valid for any reductive group. There's a couple of papers appeared at the same time. The second paper will appear written by Alan Moy and Gopal Prasad together, and one pretty much the same time by Lawrence Morris, that you can apply this sort of trick to the representations of any reductive group which have a fixed point by a suitable subgroup. What do they call them? It's the radical of a parahoric subgroup. And the cuspidals come up as induced representations, but only in this situation where you have a fixed point by a very big compact open subgroup. Right, so just remark that that's a general phenomenon. And I think leave it at that for today.
Questions? Yes? Yeah, please.
So you say in this last statement, pi is not cuspidal. Do you mean to say it doesn't have any cuspidal?
No, I was starting, sorry, I've probably got this over there. Yeah, that's just a mistaken hypothesis. Pi starts off as an irreducible. Yeah. Sorry, I was getting in a tangle through here. If just pi is irreducible, containing rho, if rho, yeah. On the other hand, once you say the stronger statement is true as well, but that's quite tricky. If you do one of these induced things, if you induce from a non-cuspidal of this particular sort, you never see any cuspidals in there. So, you can spend a lot of time running around the byways of this particular part of the subject.
I want to ask one historical question. So this idea of cuspidals coming out of compact induction, so where did it come out from?
That's something of an archaeological question. Now, I haven't searched the literature very carefully, but it's not in Jacquet's Montecatini notes, it's not in Castleman. Roger Howe mutters about it in the way he does in that heap of papers he brought out in the 70s. Through that period, people were sort of using it. I mean, Kutzko did GL2 this way, and he has to have used that. But there's a paper of Carayol which came out in '84 where he said, I can't find this proved anywhere, so here's a proof. So it was a bit like, you know, the older members of the audience remember what it was like then. The world was full of results well known to experts. It didn't imply that there were any experts that knew them or even that they were true, but they... Don't forget we didn't have the internet or tech effectively. To send around preprints to your friends. If you weren't their friends, you didn't know about it. So that's about the size of it. I always attribute it to Carayol with Push because he was the first person who actually wrote the proof down.
I have another question about this last comment that you're discussing. So supposing you took, say, from GL2 of the finite field, take something that's not cuspidal, say Steinberg, which and then you go through this whole inflate it up, patch on a central.
Well, let's the simpler true version is we take an irreducible big group which contains this inflation, and if the inflation is not inflated from cuspidal, that representation ain't cuspidal. You can actually translate the structure of the representation of the little group into the Jacquet module of the group that's containing it. Yeah.
But supposing you went this way, so let's just, for concreteness, take Steinberg on GL finite field. Inflate to GL2O, patch on a central character, so I go up to KZ, compactly induce, you get some representation.
Yeah.
And presumably this would not be irreducible.
It certainly won't be irreducible, it will be huge,
It won't be.
but it will not have any irreducible subquotient which is cuspidal. That particular one, you chose a Steinberg, which is really nice of you. In the Steinberg case, everything will contain a Steinberg.
Every subquotient of that.
Yeah. You know, generalised, not a generalised, you know, the twisting part may be problematic, but you know, on the compact bit there will always be a Steinberg.
On every desk there is this speaker button. So if you press that, then everybody can hear everybody. So that's one thing.
And after you ask a question, you have to put it off because then.
Yeah, then you have to put it off. Otherwise, everybody will hear everything else.
This is a dangerous toy, isn't it?
In general, this compact group has this complicated description. There is JKU's construction, but is there a speculation from some generalized delinguistic?
I will tell you this stuff, these level 0 representations are extremely special.
Right.
I don't think JKU's really got anything to say about those because they're all wrapped up by Morris or Moyen Brassard.
Yeah, so that's for.
So when you go to positive level, that's what I'll be talking about.
Right. So for positive, in general, we get this very non-handleable compact group. Is
there are aspects of it which you have to handle. I keep getting asked questions about this I don't want to do, or which are going to come later. The JKU construction I view as an analogue of Howe's essentially same construction, which, and this is purely dogma, it's not really fact, I view that as not part of this. Howe's construction, and I suspect JKU's, is really an instance of tame induction. But of course you can't do that if you don't actually have the whole room at all. But certainly Howe's is better thought of that way, it's much simpler. The general construction of being Custo, yeah, it's a horrible thing. But it's only certain things that you actually need to know about it. Once you prove the theorems and believe them, you can forget most of that crap. You really can. But there are some things you can't. That's what I'll be talking about. I do this. It's a nice example of how intertwining sorts things out for you and how the subject splits into two parts. Something that's definitely cuspidal. In this case, it's something that's definitely not cuspidal, but sometimes you have to worry about things in between which might be either way, and you have to filter those out in a clever way. So this is just the first example from which not too much should be used.
Other questions or comments? If not, let's break for tea.
Yes. So one thing,